Hello again, everyone. I'm Charles Gross.
And I'm Leslie Hoban. Welcome to Two on the Aisle. We have a guest reviewer with us this morning, a favorite of ours, I will say, and a good friend of mine who serves with me on the Drama Desk board for many, many years. She's a writer for the London Telegraph. She works with Theatre Mania, and she formerly was with Time Out. Her name is Diane Snyder. I should have said that in the beginning. Sorry about that, Diane.
That's okay, Leslie.
And she's here to review Merrily, We Roll Along with our own Charles Groff.
Hi, Charlie.
How are you, Diane?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I was one of the privileged few who got to see Merrily, We Roll Along in its original Broadway production. It lasted 16 performances. It is one of the most infamous flops ever on Broadway. This was the last Broadway collaboration between Stephen Sondheim and Harold Prince, the director. There were a lot of flaws, and I said to myself, you know what? I know how to fix it. Not that anyone has ever asked me, but subsequent productions did fix the show. And they rewrote the book. They did some changes for the score. And it really, I think the creative vision, at least story-wise and score-wise, was realized some time ago. But the dynamic was always, as I saw it, Frank, the composer who compromises his ideals, Charlie, the lyricist who does not, and their friend Mary, who has a brief success and then, largely as a result of Frank's personal and professional choices, one of which leaving her in the friend zone because she's been in love with him for many years, she ends up as an alcoholic. But the dynamic has been Frank and Charlie, and then there's Mary. Here, I think it's more like Frank and Mary, and then there's Charlie.
The Charlie role seems smaller to you? That's interesting. I had a similar response. And I wasn't sure if that was because, since Daniel Radcliffe of Harry Potter fame is in the role that I was expecting it to be more. It did seem like more of a supporting role to some of the other two roles than one of the three leads. All that said, I thought he sung beautifully. He handled that wonderful fast-paced patter song, Franklin Shepherd Inc., with aplomb. I loved his rendition of Good Thing Going, and I think he worked very well with the other members of the cast who are more veteran musical theater performers than he is.
Well, he is a bit of a veteran because he was on Broadway in How to Succeed. Mm-hmm. Part of this may be director Maria Friedman played Mary. And she always thought the musical was about Mary. Overwhelming evidence to the contrary. So I'm wondering if she may have pushed Mary, beautifully played by Lindsay Mendez, who makes a much stronger impression in the role than anyone I've ever seen, to the front of the stage, even though Friedman admitted, yes, I see that there's more to the musical than Mary. I also felt Daniel Radcliffe did not have as strong a presence as Charlie as I have seen him. The dynamic between him and Frank wasn't there. His Franklin Shepherd Inc. was interesting because generally it's frustration bordering on a breakdown. Here he went full-fledged nervous breakdown. Jonathan Groff also, at the beginning of the play, he's very monosyllabic, and I don't know if that's simply his interpretation of the role, or maybe Frank has just been reduced to a monotone because he's not being creative anymore and he knows it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a similar response to Lindsay Mendez as Mary. I thought she was the three leads. I thought she was the standout. I just thought she did so much with, a character that was underwritten compared to the other two, that she really stood out to me. I like Daniel Radcliffe and Jonathan Groff more than you did, but I agree. I didn't necessarily feel the bonds of friendship as being this really tight friendship that breaks apart. And I think that's something that as they work on the show for Broadway will evolve as they have more time to get into the roles and play the roles. At least I'm certainly looking forward to seeing this again when it does transfer to Broadway later.
I absolutely want to see it on Broadway. No one ever thought it would ever be on Broadway again. Mm-hmm. And one thing I have to note, even off Broadway, they have a 9-piece orchestra, and that is mm-hmm. so unusual and fabulous, because this is a score that cries out for a big orchestra. Mm-hmm. I'm told it was Sondheim's favorite score. It's certainly my favorite Sondheim score. And I'm hoping that when they do move into Broadway, they're going to have the orchestrations and the orchestra that they had the last time the show was on Broadway. I have to give a shout out to Crystal Joy Brown. She plays Gussie, who is the woman Frank leaves his wife for. And she has this one moment on stage where she's performing in one of their shows, and she just nails it. It's Gussie's big breakout, but it's also Crystal's big breakout on stage. She's wonderful in the role. I like Reg Rogers as the producer, Joe, who gives Frank and Charlie their first shot on Broadway.
I have a similar response to you with the show. It is definitely one of my favorite Sondheim scores. I thought it sounded really strong here. I do hope that for the Broadway transfer, they will beef up the orchestra a little bit, because I think part of the joy of a couple of other recent Sondheim revivals of Into the Woods and Company were that they had these huge orchestras and the score just really soared. And that is certainly a large part of the show. It's funny, Crystal Joy Brown as Gussie, I was not as big a fan of her as you were. I also think she becomes, in this version, there's too much focus on Gussie and less on the friend. She almost becomes like a fourth lead. And while I think she's a fabulous actress, the character, to me, does not need to be center stage. I'm definitely more interested in the other three main characters.
I agree. She plays an important role, but she is a supporting character.
Yeah.
And
I love. Sorry, I just wanted to echo
go ahead.
Reg Rogers, because he's someone who I've seen in a lot of great supporting roles on Broadway and off Broadway over the years, and he always brings joy to my life when I get to see him on stage.
Right, and this was the role that Jason Alexander originated on Broadway.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I should quickly say that the book for this show is by George Firth, who also I think he did Company with Sondheim.
Yep, another show where the book kind of takes a back seat to the score, where the score is much stronger than the book.
The interesting thing about this show is that it goes back in reverse. This is based on the Kaufman and Hart play of the same name. So it starts, I think, in 1976, and then it goes back, I think, to 1957, something like that, when Sputnik was launched. And we see where they are today and where they were and what happened in between. It's a fascinating way to do it. And this show really works beautifully now. And I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 playbills.
Yeah, I again, we have similar responses to this show. I think it's a glorious revival. It sounds great. They get, I think, like I said, the terrific performances from the leads and the supporting cast. I still think there's room for them to grow before the show transfers to Broadway, but it sounded beautiful, and it's a very moving show. And I would also give it 4 out of 5 playbills.
And I think now is the time to bring back Leslie.
Leslie, come back.
Oh, I'm here. I've been listening intently. I miss this show, and I'm just so grateful that it's coming back to Broadway in the fall. I'm sorry that it won't be eligible for this year, because people said it would be a Tony winner if it was in this year's group. I don't know that either, but I'm so it felt very good to listen to you guys talk about it. Charlie and I have seen at least 3 or 4 of these together, the revivals of which he's talking, and I went down to Washington once just to see the Woolly Mammoth. I was so, because I always wanted to see that play work. You know, I went to the Kennedy Center and it didn't work down there either. So I'm glad to know that, we did see the last one that we saw, I think worked, right?
I think
Before,
so.
yeah, that was the last one we saw. Okay. Anyway, it was lovely to have you today, Diane, as always.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that is our show for today. And when you go to the theater, look for Leslie and me and Diane
On the aisle.